This is topic 4, critical perspectives of play and pedagogy. In this topic, we're going to be exploring the critical theories of Jürgen Habermas, his theory of communicative action, and Paulo Freire and Henry Giraud's work around critical pedagogy. Once again, we return to the EYLF as a key source in this unit, and it says that critical theories invite early childhood educators to challenge assumptions about curriculum and consider how their decisions may affect children differently. But what is critical theory? Critical theory can be traced back to the Institute of Social Research established in Germany in 1924. The institute, commonly referred to as the Frankfurt School, was comprised of scholars who advocated social reform. Though the term critical theory was not officially coined until 1951, it has come to represent the collection of theories emanating from the Frankfurt School since its inception. Frankfurt School scholars and subsequent critical theorists draw on neo-Marxist philosophies to reassess the relationship between theory and practice by critiquing contemporary issues such as the global economy, capitalism, and neoliberalism. Critical theorists pay particular attention to power in the form of hegemonic ideologies that seek to perpetuate and rationalise the norms of the dominant culture, resulting in an unequal distribution of privilege and power that can lead to the oppression of the non-dominant culture. In this presentation, we'll focus on the work of three influential critical theorists, which again represents a scant few of those assembled under this theoretical banner. Jürgen Habermas joined the Frankfurt School in 1951. His life work continues, and again we can only focus on a small section of his ideas in this unit. Habermas focuses his work on the emancipatory possibilities within human life by using critical theory to expose contradictions in the rationality or the justice of social actions. He's best known for his theory of communicative action, which is again a term applied to an extensive body of work and theoretical constructions. Drilling into this vast body of work in this time frame is not possible, nor is it necessary. There are, however, two components of Habermas's theory that have particular relevance to your role as an educator and to the way it is presented in the EYLF. Habermas states that all knowledge is formed to serve specific needs and interests. Technical interests lead to the construction of instrumental knowledge required for the production of processes and for the solution of problems. Practical interests lead to the formation of interpretive knowledge required to inform and guide judgment. Emancipatory interest leads to opportunities for reflection in order to critique contradictions and to plan actions to understand, correct, and if required, liberate. The second key construction from Habermas's theory of communicative action is that there are two distinct spheres of social life, each with their own rules, patterns, behaviours and institutions. Habermas calls these the life world, which represents the everyday world we share informally, with domains of social life including family, culture, mass media, politics, and through which we negotiate shared meanings. The life world provides a context for action and conditions for critical reflection and disagreement. It's the medium of the symbolic and cultural reproduction of society and the vehicle through which traditions are passed. So the life world is your everyday world, the world that you live in, your day-to-day interactions with those around you. The system represents structures and established patterns of instrumental action. It's usually divided into two categories: money and power, and state administration and related institutions. The major function of money and power is the reproduction of society through the production and distribution of goods and services, so the economy. The function of the state administration and related institutions is to facilitate the system integration required to function efficiently in the life world. So that's places like schools and other institutions, really, and state government policies. Departments. For Habermas, the capacity of the system to steer the life world in a process he calls colonisation is particularly problematic in modern societies that are governed and informed by increasingly globally orientated systems and benchmarks and standards. So those two key ideas we'll explore further as we do the readings for this unit and talk about them in our tutorials. That's, in a nutshell, the theory of communicative action. Paulo Freire was a Brazilian educator who worked predominantly with the poor and oppressed. He viewed traditional forms of education as oppressive and hegemonic. And that they maintained the status quo, so that's the hegemony. He developed a new form of emancipatory education and advocated emancipatory pedagogy as a means of transformation for a more just and equal world. He's widely regarded to be the father of critical pedagogy, although he didn't ever use that term. He used pedagogy of the oppressed, but it's Paulo Freire's work that subsequent critical pedagogists have worked from and drawn on. So, what is the pedagogy of the oppressed? According to Freire, education either functions to integrate the younger generation into the logic of the present system and bring about conformity, or it becomes the practice of freedom, the means by which men and women deal critically and creatively with reality and discover how to participate in the transformation of their world. So you can see there Freire's drawing on that critical theory about the system and the life world, and the fact that if the schools function to just perpetuate the hegemony of the dominant culture, then that brings about the conformity that he's talking about there. But it doesn't need to do that, according to Freire. There are other ways to consider pedagogy so that it becomes more transformative, more emancipatory. Freire is best known for his criticism of what he called the banking system in education, whereby students are viewed as empty vessels waiting to be filled with knowledge from teachers about a particular way of knowing and understanding the world. Instead, he advocated for an education built on inquiry, dialogue, reflection, and consciousness. And that's a very important word around Freire's theory, the consciousness of the actors involved in the process of being educated. According to Freire, students and teachers should participate in inquiry and dialogue, so it should not be transmission, as in the bottom of that image there, where they work together to build knowledge and understanding. In this sense, dialogue is a cooperative activity and it involves respect and community. Engaging in this process leads to reflection on lived experiences, where students are able to situate their learning in the real world. The end result is the consciousness that can be seen and demonstrated, that can be seen in the demonstrated understanding that one has the power to transform reality. So that's that notion of consciousness, for the learner to know that they actually are situated, if informed and involved in a transformative model of education, that they can make a difference, they can make a change. So it's quite contrary to the discourses of conformity and the current discourses of productivity, I suppose, in terms of the economic model of an education system. That image there is from Joan Wink, where she's illustrated, or a student of hers actually, has illustrated, I guess, the three different models of pedagogy: the transmission model, a generative model, and a transformative model. Can you hear or see any links to the work that we've, in the last topic when we were talking about sustained shared thinking? I think there's a lot of Freire's thinking there about the inquiry and the dialogue and working together to build knowledge and understanding. Henry Giroux is an American educator and academic. He's widely acclaimed as having coined the term critical pedagogy to gather together or to assemble ideas, a collection of ideas around the critical emancipatory theories of both, including Habermas and Freire, but others, and apply them directly to contemporary school systems. For Giraud, critical pedagogy draws attention to the ways in which knowledge, power, desire, and experience are produced under specific basic conditions of learning, and illuminates the role that pedagogy plays as part of a struggle over assigned meanings, modes of expressions, and directions of desire. Now, there's a lot in there to unpack, and I think that it's important for you to look at that and think about what that means for you. And of course, to read further, there are resources on the website. So what is critical pedagogy? It's an outcome of particular struggles, and it's always related to the specificity of particular contexts, students, communities, and available resources. Now that's very important to be mindful of, the specificity of the context, which is counter the global one-size-fits-all models. It draws attention to the way in which knowledge, power, desire, and experience are produced under specific basic conditions of learning, and illuminates the role that pedagogy plays as part of a struggle over assigned meanings. Particularly brings these to bear on the formation of multiple and ever contradictory versions of the self in relation to the larger society. So critical pedagogues are concerned about who or what is being privileged in the educational context. This might include systemic instrumental action in the form of curriculum documents that are infused with norms of the dominant culture, about what's the outcome of a good education, for instance, that marginalise minority groups. By failing to acknowledge life experience students bring to schools, cultural divisions are perpetuated, and these include race, gender, class, and sexuality. So I've just put two images there. In terms of the early years, there's a little bit of a rise up around the critical pedagogical approach to challenging gender stereotypes in the early years. Blue for boys, pink for girls, all of that sort of thing. And of course, I guess the nebulous or the hub of perhaps globalizing education can be encapsulated in the OECD there. We'll talk further about that too. So implications for you and play and pedagogy in the early years. Nolan and Rabin tell us that critical theories help educators to make visible children's experiences of learning while acknowledging that there are different ways of thinking about what counts as knowledge and what might constitute a curriculum. So they're really saying you need to be, as an educator, that going back to what Giraud was saying around that specificity, you need to understand the context that you're working in, the children and the families that you're working in, so that you can think about what counts as knowledge in that particular context and how that might translate into curriculum. And in the Educator's Guide, it says that families and children are co-participants with educators in negotiating, developing and implementing learning agendas, outcomes and assessment. So that's that co-construction. And if you go back to Habermas, that's negotiating shared understandings within the life world. And the life world is that specific context. It's not a global context. Critical questions are used to support planning by exploring learning from the child's perspective. Now you should be starting to see all the threads of different theories coming in here and sort of starting to be knitted together into more complex, more critical ideas. That's the end of the lecture for this week. As I said, it's a very, very short and potted version of critical theory, but it's enough to get you started and to be thinking about how it influences play and pedagogies in the early years.